really needed to start with something super hard because this is going to be the most bleepity bleep, 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 bleep episode ever. Because today we were talking about leadership, right? You know, how leadership isn't real. Today we're going to do the alternative history of leadership, right? Yes, I'm not actually going to bleep leadership every single time it comes up in this episode. So I just need to get those all out so that I can survive.
We're actually going to say it on this episode quite a bit. The word, hang on, let's I got to get it out.
You need one too?
Leadership, leader.
Because it's not real.
It's not real.
It's not real. And today we're going to get into a little more of a discussion of why it isn't real. We're going to, like I said, do the alternative history of leadership. We could talk about like the evolution of leadership theory. We could, do great trait theory, great person theory, and, get all the way up into like the full range leadership, like start to model it. We could do the full war college level discussion on leadership, right?
And I think we are going to pull at that, some of it. And what got us here, I think we're going to cover tonight as well.
But we're not actually here to discuss the evolution of leadership ideas.
Let's just get down to where did this word come from?
Right. Like definitions matter, words matter. Where did this thing called leadership come from? And something I was digging into this a while back. And as I do, I get really like pedantic. I go full autist on these kinds of things. And
I love that about you.
Yeah. Jumping down the rabbit hole. And sometimes it's as simple as looking at the very basics. Like, what is the meaning of the word? Where does the word come from? And very basic, if you go to Google's website and you search define leadership or leadership meaning, it's going to take you to Google's version of their definition of leadership. And so if you want to take a look at it here, right here, the very first thing that pops up is their definition: the action of leading a group of people or an organization. Seems innocuous enough. I don't hate that. I don't necessarily want to bleep it out, right? But then I look down at the graphic here, use over time for the word leadership. Look at this. This is so interesting to me that it's such a commonplace word in our day here. The time on this one is 2019. Now it's 2024. And, leadership is everywhere, right? Everyone's a leader. You're a leader. You're a leader. Now you're a leader. Yeah. Everybody gets to be a leader. But if you backtrack, if you go prior to the 1900s, according to Google, it wasn't that popular of a word. It wasn't part of our normal lexicon. It wasn't something that we really put a lot of intellectual thought. There wasn't a $1.5 trillion industry about developing leaders, right? No, I'm not going to bleep it. I almost did, right? So my question is, what happened? What was it that happened, prior to 1900? What has happened after that has made this thing, this leadership idea, so important to everything that we do now? And why wasn't it important before, over the course of our evolutionary history? So that's what I kind of want to get into today is let's pull some of the layers back and see what we can figure out on what's going on here. The place that I want to start is the definition of not leadership, but the word lead, right? So if we go to the etymology of it, so etymology is how did the word develop over time? What was the definition hundreds of years ago in the books that we have, and how did the use of the word change over time, right? So here's the etymology online website for the word leadership, but we're going to take it to, and there's that graph again, right? But we're going to take it to the word leader and then to the word lead. So leader as a noun, simple enough, is one who leads, one first or most prominent. Okay, that again, seems innocuous enough. It's not such a difficult term to deal with, but it uses the word lead in it. Now we have to understand lead. And there's a couple different ways that we can view this word. First of all is as a verb. Like, what does it mean to lead? And then we'll discuss here in a second the noun of lead, right? So first up, lead is to guide, okay? But how do you guide something? You have to be out in front of it or to grab onto it. Like I'm thinking about guiding it, like one of my children, like if I'm at Disneyland or even at a grocery store and there's lots of people, I have to grab them and I have to guide them along the way. I have to pull them along the way with me. And I have to cause them to go with me. And that's what it says here, cause to go with oneself, to be at the head of, to march at the head of, or go before, right? And it kind of makes me think like, if we put that definition back into leader or in leadership, this is not necessarily a nice, feel good sort of thing that so much of the leadership industry is about right now. Where I'm grabbing somebody and I'm pulling them in a direction that I need them to go.
There's so much positive connotation around the word. And coming up through my profession, this was something that was taught to us. It's been taught to me in my experiences since I was a young athlete.
Yeah.
Since I was in school, a college student, and through, ready for the word, leadership.
I told you, I'm not going to bleep it.
Training.
Otherwise, we're not going to get very far.
Leadership training. Learning how to be a leader, which all had positive connotations.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the leader of, or this person is the leader of. That's, okay, well, that's the person who's in charge, who's ahead, who's up in front. And we started breaking down word meaning. See if you've included the noun of lead, which prior to, if we want to go left at that timeline, a lead was connected to an animal.
Yeah.
That word is used if you want to ask somebody who competes in rodeo or a rancher, or you're going to lead a horse to water.
Right.
Literally on a rope.
Yeah.
And you were the leader of that, which would be the proper use of the word.
Yeah. And it says that here in the etymology. So still under the verb lead, to lead on, to entice, to advance. Now that's, from the 1590s. And then to figuratively lead someone by the nose, like you're grabbing that person and pulling them, literally by the nose. Like that's not comfortable. That's not a feel good way to do it. And then from draught animals, so like horses and oxes, like you're using a lead, you're using a rope or something that is attached to them to pull them along. Again, that's from the 15th century. And this is to show the point that prior to the 1900s, that this word didn't have the same connotation that it does now. And yes, words can change, definitions of words can change. But again, we're trying to look at this through the evolutionary lens. Like, what was this thing? It's not like we didn't interact with people in a modern sense of leadership back in our ancestral past.
It's definitely part of, and continues to be a part of the prehistoric animal.
Yeah. Like we're designed to, for lack of a better word, lead each other, right? But what did we call it before the 18th and the 19th centuries?
It's still part of the medieval construct.
Yes.
With godlike technology, that we all collectively at the speed of light have this positive feel good about the word leader as a person in charge, or leadership being a feel good craft, skill that someone possesses in order to do what with. And certainly part of our study is that we found throughout there's an industry, a leadership industry, whether it be business or coaching or school or academics. Is there really a consensus? Because we can pull people in and be like some very highly effective and very highly educated people, and you're going to get a variety of answers, but none of them are like, the same thing.
Well, yeah. And like if you go to a job interview, and especially if you're going to be put into a position of, quote, leadership, right? You're director or a supervisor of some kind, inevitably, you're going to get the interview question, what is your leadership philosophy?
Or what is your leadership style?
Yeah. Well, that just tells me that it's an individual thing and that there is no consensus among the leadership elite and scholars and whatever, that we don't actually know what this thing is that, going back to that graphic on Google's website, that is so popular here, right? Like we all know this idea of leadership, but none of us actually know it at all. What is it? We don't know what leadership is. We can point to some of these definitions, but the definitions don't give the feel-good connotation that it did before. I mean, look at this one under the noun lead. It's the action of leading or being at the front or the leading place. And then some guy, Johnson, I tried to figure out who this is. He stigmatized it as a low and despicable word. As in, like, you don't want to be a lead. Or you don't want to do the thing of leading because that's not good. Like, pulling somebody around you're treating them like an animal is not good. That's not what we want.
No. And we've come to the conclusion, and this is conclusionary, that what's the scientific law principle here? You put out a hypothesis, you let the community test it.
Sure.
Let's let it come back. And I think there's some out there that are going to see this and think that we're saying this just to be counterculture.
Right.
But sure.
We just want to be leadership iconoclasts.
Sure.
We just want to be bombastic and like eventually it's going to come down. Well, who hurt you? Who is the toxic leader? Show me where the toxic leader hurt you.
Why do you have to put the word toxic in front of leadership? If it's a neutral word,
right,
which we're arguing it isn't, because it has positive connotation. If you have someone who is in charge, who's hurting others, why do you have to put some negative connotation word in front of the positive connotation word?
Right. Why does it need a qualifier?
Right.
Because if we all know what it is, then we should just use the definition of what it is rather than trying to massage this term so that we can mold it to fit our conversations and the message that we are trying to communicate.
So then why make the bombastic claim that leadership is not real?
Because it's not.
It's because it's not. Because in taking a look at it, certainly maybe from a different lens, looking at it from a different angle, that leadership is a subcategory of power and influence. And that makes people really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just the idea of looking at solving human terrain problems or solving leadership problems through a lens of someone is not demonstrating enough influence and enough power. Positive could be power or negative, depending on, I guess, that now goes into the
moral judgment.
That's the moral judgment of. But what did we call leaders in the past? Kings,
sovereigns,
right? Legionnaires, centurions. Like, what did we call Leonidas as a Spartan?
Right.
He led those men, the 300 to Thermopylae.
And we don't have the vocabulary for it because it's been conditioned out of us.
Right. It would be interesting to just go back and then look at how were these people revered, and then what titles were they given? Was it just a rank and title and position? Was enough for people to understand this thing that we now call you're the leader? But was it the title that implied that person was out on top of some hierarchy?
Yeah.
And not necessarily in a positive way, but they were in charge of. We took some notes on a timeline looking at, well, then what did life in the 1900s look like?
Right.
Very industrial age.
Yep.
Did that word change? Because
what was going on at the time in human history? Like, between 18 and 1900, we're looking at the Industrial Revolution, right? A huge amount of technology is being developed, and we needed people, not just the machines, but we needed people to operate the machines. And what we were finding, especially through like the Prussian way of thinking, if you look at military drill and their educational system, that people were interchangeable just like the machines themselves. And so if you train up the people to behave in a very predictable and specific way, then it doesn't matter who was pulling the lever or pushing the button on the machine. And if that person fell out, well, you could just plug somebody else in their place and the machine would keep going.
Would we make the argument that human behavior is very predictable?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And the Prussians found that to be true. And they capitalized on it, which is why they became the premier fighting force during this time period, is because of how they made such advancements in close order drill and their weaponry, which is what led to eventually like Napoleon being such an incredible force to be reckoned with. And then that all carried over into the Industrial Revolution itself, the creation of mass production, sweatshops and manufacturing plants, logistics, shipping, all of these things. And what became clear is that we needed more people able to be plugged into these various slots to keep the machines going. Ergo, over the course of time, we get the modern educational system where regardless of who you are, you're going to go through the same method of education starting in kindergarten. And there's the Prussian German word for starting very young. Put them in there so that you teach them all the rules, you teach them obedience, you teach them everything they need to know to be successful in the first grade, and the second and the third, and all the way up through primary and then secondary school, so that when they leave high school or secondary school, most people are not going to go on to college. They're going to go to the factory. And they're going to stand there and they're going to pull the lever and they're going to push the button and they're going to churn out widgets. Because that's what we needed from them, we being large industrial society, in order to meet the demands of all the goods and wars and other things that are going on at the time.
And we're still kind of in this medieval social construct.
Well, absolutely.
But what has changed in our taking a look at things from in creating kind of our own turn, the anthroponautic and the anthropic domain, is that the internet has changed things, because now we have access to information at the speed of light.
Right.
So there's the godlike technology piece that we now have, and we're starting to buck against a lot of the medieval construct.
Yeah.
And maybe this is certainly just part of it, because there is no word that just, I think, burns us up more than this idea that we are teaching, you can teach others leadership.
Right.
It is this umbrella term that just these positive feel goods kind of fall under when you are in a certain position interacting with others.
Yeah.
And I just did a quick search on my own, just, what comes up. And there's a lot of authors out there, and there's a lot of information that anyone who's checking this out probably does read. And it's got a bookshelf of, I've read this book, or I've gone to this seminar, I've read this, and all the feel goods have come down on it. This one that I pulled up just happens to be 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell.
Yeah, we'll talk about him
in a
John
minute.
Maxwell.
Yeah. Right. I mean, law one.
Laws.
Yeah. Right. Which laws like Principia.
Yeah. Laws? Like irrefutable laws?
Irrefutable, like gravity, which we don't even know what that is, but we can certainly use it to land on Mars.
But see, gravity is predictable. Leadership is not predictable.
But human behavior is.
But if we can't settle on a term, like a definition for the term
that involves human behavior.
Yeah.
That's like, we shouldn't even be having this. Like, this should have been figured out already.
Right.
And someone like us taking a look at it shouldn't even be upset at the idea that, what is it that you're trying to teach us and why doesn't it work?
Yeah.
But as we've discussed in other episodes, it's like, well, I'm going to give you these tools under leadership. And I feel like, can we edit a rainbow in this? Leadership, right? And when it doesn't work, you're a bad leader.
Right.
Or is it just the bad advice off of old tropes and bad technology that is putting the operator in a position to not be effective? And then you really look at these, and then you find after law, there's something tangible. They're more tangible at the end of these, that like there is a teachable point in these other items, but these other notes, now I'm teasing the audience. These other notes are things that actually are teachable and trainable.
Yeah.
Like navigating the anthropic domain, but to guise them under this false tense that if I just give you the title, now you have the power to then influence. But if you don't understand that, you are ineffective. We've already drawn that up.
Yep.
Ineffective, invisible.
Right. Yeah. And by that quad chart, that 2x2 matrix, most of the quote leaders that are out there are incompetent, right? Because what the leadership industry has done is they've taken a bunch of invisibles, people who are of low value and low training, and they've given them a position. They've given them an authority, right? And that increases their influence. Go check out Influence by Robert Cialdini. It'll explain what authority does to a person and the people around them. But it just moves them up in the value scale, which just makes them incompetent. They don't have the ability, the training, the know-how to be effective. And then what happens with incompetent people? Well, they hurt others because they are incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. And hurt people then turn around and hurt more people. And we get ourselves into this vicious cycle, especially if we take those hurt people and then we make them, quote, leaders. Well, now they're hurt and they're incompetent, and they're just going to perpetuate the cycle. And actually, I've got a great quote for this. So let me pull this up real quick. All right, this is from Building the Elite. They write here, eventually, the system produces a lot of injured people, but the nature of the feedback loop makes it difficult to connect the processes that produce the injuries, and the system remains largely unchanged. All of the injured people are forgotten. The survivors are highlighted, and new people are fed into the funnel. And as an aside, yes, I love that this quote is right next to John Boyd's OODA loop, which we'll do a full deep dive episode on what this OODA loop is. You know, there's your teaser for you. But yeah, this quote here talks about a system. You know, they're talking specifically about physical movement in this book, but the quote, the idea, the principle here applies perfectly to a structure, a human hierarchy, and the process by which we guide ourselves that produce these injured people. Like we were just saying, the incompetent people will hurt others. They'll create these injuries, and those who survive, well, then they get promoted. And now hurt people are incompetent leaders hurting more people. More people get fed into it. And those who don't survive it, they either are removed or remove themselves from the organization.
And there's a quote, I believe it goes, don't attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, and this is just my take of it, that are ineffective leaders by way of their own training or experience are doing what they truly believe is correct in order to move people, power and influence them to accomplish whatever it is the organization's goal is. And it's business, it's revenue, it's innovation, it's, in case of military, it's mission, which I guess mission can be applied to all kinds of, right? If it's school, it's teaching and effectiveness of learning students. And the common thread through all of these is you're dealing with the same naked murder ape.
Right.
And collections of them
mm-hmm.
together. Using old tropes.
And the way that those naked murder apes have been conditioned, they've been taught through the educational process to view leadership, right? Because just as we needed people back in the 1800s and early 1900s to stand at a machine, pull the lever, and push the button, we now need people to be in positions of authority and lead. And that lead...
Or manage, because now there's a split.
Manage, whatever it is.
There's that split in leadership management, right? Which is looked at, it's taught the same, it's under the same umbrella.
We haven't been able to figure out the definition of either of them. They get used interchangeably. Yeah, right. We don't know what that means.
You're a better manager than you are a leader, but then like, how do we define both of them? And the management is about things, and leaders is about people. And then, but people don't people well, let alone understand the machinery.
Right.
And then what happened before machines were a thing? You can look up, there's a great I believe we can hunt it down online if we want to dive into it. It's like the Cavalry Soldier's Guide to Horsemanship.
Right.
Like that was a thing that was taught. We started this conversation years ago with this idea that you wanted to write a book about why drill.
Yeah.
And why drill and ceremonies and moving collections of men via command to do things and move was a byway teaching leadership.
Right.
And then we subcategoried that as you had something that was really interesting, that the Argentine tango is that the Argentinian officers had to learn how to dance.
Yeah.
Had to do this dance in order to, well, I think it's even in your definitions that you were dropping, that there's one in here that includes lead as something that happens in theatrics in a play.
I've got it here: to lead someone in a dance, to compel them through a course of irksome actions. Irksome having a certain connotation as well. But, to get your partner to move in a particular way that they wouldn't do on their own.
So there are places where you don't look at it as you're learning leadership skills by way of, it's not like a kid goes into sports because they're there to play the sport, not learn the leadership skills. Or someone above that goes, this is going to be really great for you to learn your leadership skills. But you're learning how to interact with other human beings by way of an activity.
Mm-hmm.
And in that you are gaining experiences. But then everyone thinks those experiences are unique to them.
Yeah.
But if human behavior is predictable, why can't we define leadership as this just solid thing? Is it?
Because it's not real.
Because it's something else.
Because it's something else. Yeah. Well, and before we get to what the something else is, let's take a closer look at this leadership industry and the smartest people that are out there. You mentioned John Maxwell. Let's give him his due. Give him the opportunity to show us what he's made of.
If you let me go, I'm going to rip on this. Because...
oh, my dear.
Dude. Law 1, the law of the lid, which is leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. Now, effectiveness sounds like something that we can measure.
Yeah.
Effectiveness. Now, there's one thing that I can lock onto this that's not leadership, but effectiveness I understand because that could be measured. Law 2, the law of influence, which there's a book in and of itself
right there,
that a PhD had to break down. And even the first chapters of this book, he's like, I'm going to take all the psychoanalysis stuff that I do and put it into terms that, and these are my words, it's immediately applicable. Because what it is he dove into to just go, hey, here are the immediate lessons learned, apply this, I think is brilliant in that book.
Yeah.
The book is called Influence.
It's not called leadership.
Right. Law 3, the law of process. Leadership develops daily, not in a day, which is the application of training and practice.
Yeah. The way is in training.
The way is in training. Process I understand. Law 4, the law of navigation. Anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. But dude, if you can't read topo, if you can't read a topographic map, you don't understand weather, if you don't know the limitations or high performing attributes of your craft, organization, the members in it, then you can't effectively. Now, navigation, I understand, because there's no negotiating terrain.
Right.
There's negotiating around terrain.
And deciding what is the proper course.
Right.
Which is providing a vision, which is frame. Right? Which is sharing of information of how you see the world and what you hope to accomplish.
Right. Law 5, the law of addition. Leaders add value by serving others.
What is value?
Right. I mean, I love that. That's very feel good, but I've also witnessed a lot of individuals in leadership positions that gave nothing to anyone and looked at their organization as a place to extract talents of others in order to perform mission, which is fine. But then where's the judgment, the moral judgment of, I have a mission to accomplish.
Yeah.
I don't care if I put people through a churn and leave them burned out as long as I accomplished. Now that's the Machiavellian the definition, right? Of
the ends justify the means kind of thing.
So that one, just from a pure law perspective, I think is laying down, I mean, I like it, but there's choice in that law.
Yeah.
Law 6, the law of solid ground. Trust is foundation of leadership, which we've broken down. Trust to the naked murder ape is, can you help me survive and can you help me replicate? And if you can help me survive and replicate, then I'm going to tribe with you. And we drew out Dunbar layers.
Yeah.
Are you within my Dunbar layer? Because if you're in my Dunbar layer, that means I trust you to...
Yeah, you're a friend as opposed to a stranger. And I trust friends. I distrust strangers.
Right. And we'll war against stranger tribes. I'll arm up and fight to the death for people in my inner circle. I like how solid ground is the idea of then is trust. The law of respect. People naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. Sounds like power and influence.
And it sounds like a gradient. We naturally, that's his word, naturally look to those who are of higher value and better training.
So the naked murder ape within the medieval construct that looks like a chain of command or a business org chart.
Right.
Looking and communicating through the lens of godlike speed of light technology.
Yeah.
Is going to gravitate towards the one that has more power and influence.
Yeah. Even if you put somebody, you give them the title of being the leader, the director, the president, or whatever, that at the top of the hierarchy, if they are a low value person or if they are poorly trained, we are naturally not going to follow them. We're going to look for somebody else in the organization that has charisma, that has game, that has some sort of survival and replicative value that we want, and we will naturally follow them.
So is that the built-in excuse then? Because I feel like that's the trope that is given to, you're in a hierarchy where someone is in charge, but you can be a leader at any level and you don't have to have a title in order to be a leader.
We are all leaders.
But you're not. If you're not.
It's the syndrome from The Incredibles that once everybody is special, then nobody is. If everybody's a leader, then nobody is.
Well, certainly I am from the generation of, well, I think where it started, the self-esteem generation.
Yeah, the participation trophy generation.
I mean, this is kind of where it happened. And everyone feels that sense of entitlement to, well, I came and I showed up, but you didn't win.
Right.
The law of intuition. This one hurts. Leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. So you're using a word that doesn't exist with a bias of a word that I have a difficulty trying to define. So then what is this leadership bias?
Well, from our perspective, it's actually the orientation, is that you're going to look at the world through your particular orientation. You're going to analyze and synthesize it based off of your orientation.
So when we break down OODA loop, I want to bring Varg Freeborn's book into this Beyond OODA.
Sure.
Because he's got a chapter in there which he discusses this intuition. Like, intuition can also be described as it's not real. Like, the human machine is the human machine, and someone else's experience seeing something coming as if they got chills and I just had an intuition about something. It's because their orientation, their background, all of that, we're going to draw the star up. Everything in that, the second O piece allowed them to get signs, which set off, if you don't have that sensitivity to whatever it is that this person is sensing, it looks like magic.
Right.
It looks like this unexplainable thing that this person just had the intuition that something was going to happen. But could it possibly be that that particular person's sensitivity to it is something out of their background, or something out of their training?
Yeah, but that's what they would say about leaders, is that what they're doing seems like magic, but we think that we can take whatever it is that they're doing and we can reproduce it, we can bottle it, we can, take people to a weekend seminar and we can sprinkle it on them, and then they themselves go pull the leadership lever or push the leadership button and be successful at it.
And there comes the trope that leadership is both art and science. Well, then show me the science, and not everyone can draw.
Yeah. Show us the laws like this kind of laws, not John Maxwell's 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, because they're not true.
Law 9, the law of magnetism.
I actually really like this one.
Who you are is who you attract. I think Law 2 of Anthroponautics said you're both as attractive as you are equally also repulsive.
Yeah.
You are so awesome.
But everybody hates you.
Everyone hates you.
Yeah, we don't need to go through all of these. The point is that
I want to, because I just want to fight every one of these.
Maybe someday, sign up for the OnlyFans and we'll go through all of them for you.
Put law behind the connection. We've already discussed is in dunbar layers, inner circle, dunbar layers, empowerment. You have to have power and influence to be empowered, because you have to take power to be empowered. Law of bigger picture, law of buy-in, law of victory. That sounds like winning.
Yeah.
And if you hashtag win, that means you have to go to war, which means you have to compete.
Yeah.
Which means there has to be a gradient, because there has to be a hill to conquer. I want to fight. I want to fight every one of these.
The thing is, he's not wrong. It's just that he's not entirely right.
No, right.
This book, as good as it is, I've read it, I read it, it's useful, just as the Ptolemaic system of the geocentric solar system was useful, is still useful, but it's not correct. It is not the most up-to-date model for our understanding of how our solar system operates. And such is the case for leadership turning in now to anthroponautics being the most up-to-date method for looking at this, quote, leadership problem.
And we want to take a look at it from that sense of these unexplained orbital bodies in space. I don't know why this undiscovered planet is showing up in this place. It must be doing some kind of a loop-de-loop out there in the ether,
right?
Which was defined as an epicycle.
Yeah, these 21 irrefutable laws are actually 21 epicycles.
The laws make more sense than the guise of what it is that the umbrella term is the epicycle.
That is true.
The breakdown in the laws now start to make sense. Magnetism, I can understand.
Right.
Navigation, I can understand. Influence, I understand. Natural intuition, part of the UDA.
Yeah.
Which, putting it under the umbrella term of the thing that I can't define or see repeated out of some kind of a teaching.
Yeah.
Now, it's repeatable when people have this natural ability to do the thing, but that I would attribute more to our natural biology responding to survival and replicative needs than it would be the feel good of being in an organization where someone is sunshine and rainbowing people into complicit action in order to make a business more money.
Yeah. The thing is that John Maxwell is not the only one who's peddling this kind of stuff. This is what the industry is. I mean, look at some of what other people have said. Jack Welch, good business leaders create a vision, articulate the vision, passionately own the vision, and then relentlessly drive it to completion. Gobbledygook, what does that even mean? Jocko Willink, there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. Okay, well, now we're going to blame the operator. If something goes wrong, you better own it to the extreme. It's your fault.
Which in it, and I want to break down an episode, just in and of itself, of a quote that, if I break it down, there are no mistakes, only consequences.
Yeah.
So from this very cold observational perspective, it doesn't matter what's going on. It's some other underlying effort. Ultimately, being a witness to just who won is enough looking at things from the outside.
Yeah.
And that I could understand that quote from that perspective of there is only effective or ineffective. But then it just takes hands off. And to your point, then it just blames the bad leader. Well, if said bad leader wants to improve, then I got to dive into the motivation porn world. motivational porn where it's all the feel goods, but none of the substance.
Yeah.
Of bad tropes that I think that felt good. That advice felt good. I'm going to go attempt to apply it.
Yeah. We're going to show up to a muster.
And it,
and we're going to do push-ups as a team. And each one of you are going to take turns as a leader. And at the end of it all, you're now blessed off as leaders. Now go and extremely own your business.
Does it work? Because we could just take that back to Heraclitus.
Yeah.
1 in 100.
Yeah. Does it work? Wait, yes. I mean, can it? Yes. But does it work for everybody? No, absolutely not.
Well, then why? Doesn't it work for everyone? Is it because willingness can't be taught?
Certainly that is part of it.
Okay. Is it because it's more art than science?
Is because people don't have the orientation for it.
Then how do we train the person? How do we, no kidding, make an effect on individuals so that they could become trained and they can secure their own sovereignty or the sovereignty of others?
Well, that's the whole point of Anthroponautics then, is to give them the tools that they can update their orientation and start putting things into practice, grow their value, get better trained. We're not going to tell them what they should do. We're just going to tell them that these are the things that you can do. We're not going to tell you what you should want as a result. How are you going to define your goals, or what does #winning look like for you? But we're going to give you the tools that will get you there if that's what you want. As opposed to just saying, well, you gotta extremely own everything that you do. And if people fail, and it's your fault. How'd I do?
That was good. And he's right, but it doesn't give a lesson other than, I mean, it is take the initiative on your own to reverse engineer things. But then I had to hear the statement and then go on my own and whiteboard, what did that really mean?
Right.
Couldn't I tell someone, hey, you need to reverse engineer, or you need to debrief and take a critical look at the things that are working and not working.
Yeah.
In order to become more effective. And then effective leaders are good leaders.
Yeah.
And that's how you become a good leader as opposed to the bad leader. But where's the training on how to reverse engineer good processes?
Yeah.
Because one of the laws was process.
Mm-hmm.
Teach me process. Don't broad brush the word leadership and leadership wash people so that they continue to take the bad tropes and continue to damage others.
Yeah. Speaking of bad tropes and bad processes, Brene Brown, not going to knock the wonderful research that she has done on helping people work through trauma and all of those kinds of things. But saying that leaders need to be vulnerable, nobody likes to follow a vulnerable leader, because vulnerable people usually end up losing because they're vulnerable. They're weak. They're not strong. What was John Maxwell's, one of his laws? That we naturally follow strong leaders. Well, now we have two people conflicting about what it is to be a strong leader, or a good leader. Good leader. Stephen Covey, leadership is a choice, not a position. Is it a choice? Like, do you just wake up one day and be like, you know what? I choose to be a leader. Despite my position, I work in the mailroom of the company here, but today I'm going to show up, I'm going to clock in, and I'm a leader. No, you can't negotiate leadership. You can't negotiate people following you. You can't walk into the room and just say, you know what? Today you're going to follow me. It's just, that's the way it is. It's not a choice.
not by words and choice alone.
Choice is involved in all of this.
There is an anthroponic law about increasing power and influence.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work.
No, the choice in all of this is to be willing to use the anthroponic tools to develop your value, and increase your training so that you can become influential. And it's the influence piece of it, which is a combination of value and training, that cannot be negotiated. You cannot negotiate genuine influence.
And when it is attempted, it just looks clumsy, it looks sloppy, doesn't give you the feel goods.
Yeah, I mean, it's the guy at the bar with the girl who's saying, you should want me.
You can't negotiate genuine desire.
You should think that I'm everything. You should go home with me right now.
I really want that high key with Cartman going, respect my authority.
Right.
Because you had to tell me that you were in charge for me to. And this is, I guess, where laws and punishments come in. If you don't do the thing, then you'll be hit with a repercussion.
Yeah. See, all of these people have these ideas of what leadership is or isn't, or things that you can do to become a better leader, but none of them agree. And none of them are rooted in human nature. None of them are actual irrefutable laws like Newton, right? None of them look to the academic rigor such as Cialdini's influence, right? None of them look at grand strategy as like John Boyd, right? And so we're left with this nebulous mass of leadership confusion, right? And to really drive this home, I want to turn now to SimonSinek, who is like the ultimate, the quintessential in leadership theory right now. We all love this guy because he's so adorable.
You're giving me too much credit because I didn't answer your question.
That's okay. I'm used to that. You're not a very good listener, but you are a good talker.
I have a long list of failed relationships that would agree with you. You are in a very difficult and uncomfortable position, because I think leadership is more difficult now than it has ever been, because you're dealing with human anxiety, you're dealing with human uncertainty, you're dealing with human ambition and human egos, and again, especially young people who think they know what they want and don't, who have certainty and are very outspoken and do not mind going around their boss's boss to come to you.
Okay, so I want to pause here. I think he's absolutely correct. So I think he's given the right diagnosis here, that people are struggling, that leadership, whatever it is, the human terrain is incredibly difficult right now. Getting people to do what we need them to do is incredibly difficult right now for most people. If you are influential, I don't think it's that difficult. But since most people are either invisible or incompetent or ineffective, yeah, they're struggling. The leadership environment, the anthropic domain as we call it, is fraught with conflict. It's competitive, contested, right? It's all those things. So I full on agree with him here. What we're going to show here in a second is that I disagree with his prescription, with his idea of what we should do about it.
Be dealing with a 19-year-old saying, "Why am I not given this?" And you're like, "I don't need, where do you work?" You know? They have no fear of doing that. They also have no fear of quitting. And so we've seen this pattern where, remember, they're as a young generation, they're actually less equipped to deal with stress than previous generations. And so anxiety is high, and they're very confrontation avoidant. So, for example, we've seen this, where they feel like they deserve a raise, and they don't know how to ask for a raise, and so instead of asking for a raise, they'll just quit. And then sometimes with an email that says, "You don't value me, you don't pay me enough," you're like, we just had to ask. The answer, we love you, you know?
So herein we see that people have a self-inflated idea of what their value is, but then they also don't have the training to bring it to pass. You know, they think that the best thing that they can do is just to send an angry email, and go do something else, rather than to engage with another person in person, mano a mano, and have a conversation, a discussion, because they don't know how. They would rather just wash their hands of it.
Or they fear the conflict.
Right.
Which not all conflict is bad. But it's certainly going to be if the prehistoric animal feels some sense of threat, and you go into it with this heightened sense of anxiety.
Yeah.
Because the human machine is designed, anxiety is supposed to make you think about things, or it's supposed to spike your blood full of adrenaline and cortisol so that you can beat a saber-toothed tiger to death.
Right.
But if you're feeling that level of anxiety because you want to have a discussion with your boss or some next tier leader about demonstrating or displaying more value so that you can make more money, but instead you just want to bounce and you want to send a passive aggressive email about, why didn't you just go to have the conversation?
Yeah.
But he's right. Like, this dynamic is happening, and the people in this audience are nodding their head going, yeah, I mean, I've experienced this.
Right.
And we've discussed, we work with a lot of young people, and it is kind of that. I think we're in a position where it's very easy for people to want to come talk to us, and there is that sense of frustration that, man, I'm not valued. People don't see the things that I'm doing, but well, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you, when we've had this discussion, well, then the training begins at be more.
Yeah. Are you willing?
Right. But I can give you the answer, but are you going to do the thing? And that's the 1 in 100 Heraclides quote. But if this dynamic is occurring, then we're not training. We collectively as leaders, you want to give yourself that title or not, or influencers, power and
Which
influencers.
I don't like the influencers title
because that has negative connotation in our lexicon.
Yeah.
Power has a negative connotation in our lexicon.
Yeah.
Because with that, if you do something bad with it, power's bad. You shouldn't be seeking power.
Yeah.
But you're ineffective without it.
But if you did something good with the power or good with the influence, then you're a leader.
Well, right. Because 21 is one of the laws of if you have it, then make the moral judgment to do the right thing with it, which I can't impose my morality on someone who has seized power.
Yeah. I don't think that Simon is wrong, but let's continue on here and we'll get to his prescription.
So they're not afraid of quitting, but they are afraid of asking for things. Or if they do ask for things, it sometimes comes across very aggressive or accidentally black and white. Like, I've been here 8 months and I would like a 50% raise. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, and the problem is that they're ill-equipped. What they're doing is they're putting you in a yes or no position. So even if you say, here's the plan to get you that over the course of the next 8 months, they take it as a no, because I asked for something black and white. And so one of the things I think there's a huge opportunity for our company is to help people to build in training that helps them with their human skills. I hate the term soft skills. Please, let's never use that term again. We talk about hard skills and soft skills. Those things are opposite. Hard and soft are opposites. They're hard skills, the skills you need to do your job, and human skills, the skills you need to be a better human being. And we want you to excel at both. And we're going to train you to do both. And some of the human skills that are underappreciated and undertrained in this day and age are how to have difficult conversations, how to have an effective confrontation, how to give and receive feedback. And I think we have to train those things so that if we equip them with the skills, instead of saying, I've been here for 8 months, I want a raise, to say, I've been here for 8 months, I really love it here. My goal is to stay here. I have financial ambitions. Can you help me get on a path to get to this number? Now we can.
I feel like both of those conversations handled by a leader who also doesn't know how to navigate people ends up being the same result.
Right.
That I can come at you and make it black and white and put you in a position to help me progress, or I can have the gentle conversation with you, and that leader still looks at the ambitious person like, oh, I don't know how to help you.
Thing is,
I don't know how to.
He's asking you to go and have a negotiation with the saber-toothed tiger, like to go and sit down with the person who is in conflict with you and reach some sort of consensus. But nothing about that is natural. Again, John Maxwell's maxim, his law that says We naturally follow the strong leader. You can't negotiate this sort of thing. You can't negotiate the power and influence dynamic. It has to be natural. It has to come through a gradient. You have to be in some way better than the person who was on the other end.
So I'm giving his feedback, like I'm listening to him. I'm giving him the north-south. Like, yes, organization should. He doesn't like the term hard skill, soft skill, but okay, you used it. Let's use it. Hard skills. Any organization, there's got to be skill sets to do said job.
Yeah.
Job.
Technical competence.
Yes. Which is competence. Technical competence. And then soft skills, which that's the human terrain piece.
It is.
And this is now enter things that we've been whiteboarding. How do you produce a better leader? And we whiteboarded this stuff to death and had to step back looking at it and chafing my neck going, how many times did I, like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? Because we kept running into a problem when we tried to define it with the word leadership until eventually, now we've come full circle on this conversation, is that it doesn't exist. These skills, these soft skills that he's talking about, which he says need to be taught, like he is recognizing that these skills need to be instructed.
Yeah.
Like we direly across human beings,
Yes.
need to be taught these skills. I agree.
Yeah. We need training.
But Simon, then where's the book? Then where's the book on how to train the thing that you said needs to be trained?
Well, and what are the things to be trained at all?
Like, I agree. Damn right. We need soft skill training. The human terrain training, we need it. We need it collectively. But then to put that on someone, now you were thrown into the whimsical, magical world of epicycle leadership. And I believe it is a system that, as you quoted out of the Building Elite, damages people more than it helps them.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Just like you're saying, where's the book? Where's the equivalent of like the book that they give you at pilot ground school that teaches you all the basic aviator knowledge that you need in order to not die in the aircraft?
So taking our inspiration from Anthroponautics, being the aeronautics for human navigating, for human terrain, for human dynamics, is that you got to go to ground school first. And you're given a book of all of those sciences where all the applicable lessons have been figured out.
Written in blood.
Yeah, to teach the operator to not only fly the aircraft, but to navigate that hunk of metal through weather, to look at topography, to get from point A to point B with a certain amount of fuel.
Right.
And to do it effectively. Where's ground school for SimonSinek? Doesn't like the word soft skills, but then where's the technical manual for soft skills?
Right.
Is it buried in some deep psychology, sociology? If that's the case, and we were always whiteboarding these things, if we were asking these questions, we would have found the book already.
Yeah.
It would have been as simple as, well, we figured out this new piece of technology, and when it was brand new, half the dudes who tried to take the thing in the air died.
Yeah.
So if you survived 2 or 3 flights, you were an instructor. We don't do that now, but like in the very beginning of this particular craft, of this new science, of this new domain, that was a thing. There was a lot of pain in order to learn. We've been human being-ing, if I could turn that to it, I tried to turn the word. We've been peopling for a long ass time. Where's the book on how to effectively people? And then in different generations, some new author comes in, and not to say that the things that have been captured by these authors hasn't been correct. It's that also the world is changing. So if I pick up Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is given, there's like a handful of those notes in there. I mean, we could read them, and we've broken them out.
Sure.
Another episode. Like, yes, absolutely, these are correct. But then the world has also changed.
Yeah.
And did he even know why this TTP, his tactic, his technique, and his procedure worked. Like, I think from an observation standpoint, it was like an astronomer looking through a telescope going, I see this heavenly body do this thing. I'm going to take all the notes.
Right.
And I'm going to pass them. I don't know why it's doing the thing.
Yeah, it's like the Tycho Brahe who is sitting in his observatory and just writing down his observations, but he doesn't know why it works the way that it does.
And we're trying to get to thank you, SimonSinek, because we're trying to get to a deeper why.
Yeah.
We're asking the deeper why.
Yes.
And I think that collection in those books, if you read them just looking at it through our lens, are a collection of tactics, techniques, and procedures, which give the operator, like, if you do this, this will work. And then if it continues to work, then why question the deeper why?
Yeah.
It just, this thing worked until it stopped working.
Yeah.
Well, then is it my fault? Am I not charismatic enough? Am I not powerful enough? Am I influential enough? Am I not? Then it blames the operator as opposed to, this is possibly now an old book.
Yep.
And this TTP, which you never got down to the hard science of why it worked, now doesn't work.
Yeah, and can we find a more general principle, no kidding, actual laws that we can rely on to develop new TTPs that are going to move us even further down the line in terms of leadership or influence or whatever we want to call it?
I don't want to live in a world, if I have any effect and influence and power over it, where someone is just being told, do this thing, and it works like a magic trick without the operator really knowing a deeper why in their behavior that is driving behavior in others. Like, that is very much you can learn from like an apprenticeship.
Yeah. Like,
you learn from the master. And then someone else comes in and wants to look at it from another end and be like, why are you doing this thing? Why are you stroking the brush like this in order to paint? Why do you do this thing? Why do you dance this way? Why do you move this way? And they'll be like, well, it's just, there's a principle in asking very talented athletes why they're so good at something, and they'll attempt to give an explanation. Right. But then when someone in who studies kinesiology comes in and witnesses it, they'll attribute it to something more scientific.
Yeah. But that's the case with Dale Carnegie, is that he writes down these observations while he's already at the top of his game. And so, like, he's already a successful person, and you don't get to do what successful people do. You have to start at the bottom. You have to start with step one. And you have to use these tools, these anthroponautic tools, to eventually work up to a place where the observations that Dale Carnegie gave us are true, but they're not always going to be true. Thing is, Dale Carnegie, because of who he was and his particular value and his charisma, his training, could have done pretty much whatever he wanted. He could have farted into a bag and handed it to you, and you would have said, thank you. You are you. And you can use these tools, these anthroponautic tools, to develop your TTPs that are going to help you fly your machine through the domain.
We pulled that book because it's one of those staple, like, if you want to be better at this thing, that book is on like a top 10 list in so many places. And it's a great collection of tactics, techniques, procedures. I'm just interested in getting down to, then, why does the advice that you're giving me actually work?
Right.
Because then if I could figure out why the thing actually worked, then it can be reverse engineered.
Yes. If you can measure the thing that you care about, then you can start to model it. And if you can model it, you can reverse engineer various different things around you. And if you can reverse engineer it, then you can teach it. And if you can teach it, you can optimize it. And if you can optimize it, now you can weaponize it. But that then invites a huge amount of judgment and a lot of ethical concerns when you start talking about weaponizing anything.
And we've captured that process when we whiteboarded that process down. So then the question in this reverse engineering piece and then being able to train it is, if this had been figured out, there'd be a book, there'd be a hard science on teaching these soft skills.
Right.
And as far as I know, it doesn't exist.
No, we would have found it by now. For sure.
So delivering the good idea fairy to a crowd full of people going, it would be really great and we need. So this is this onus. I'm putting an onus on the crowd out here as he's giving a speech. I'm giving an onus to all of you that we not only have to teach hard skills, we need to teach soft skills. Yes, absolutely we do. How do we do it? I'd like to figure that out.
Well, that's why we're here. That's the whole point and purpose of Anthroponautics, is not only to give you the tools, but the training to use them. So stick around, we'll get you there. All right, I think we're going to leave it there. Leadership isn't real. And one more for the record books. There we go. All right, thanks for sticking around. This is a tough one. Not only because, I feel like I need to wash out my mouth with all of the bad words we've been saying, but it's because leadership is such a difficult thing to grasp, to wrap our arms around.
I think this one's going to ruffle people because this one, certainly we've had many conversations about it with us, with very close inner Dunbar layers. Because if you put this on a stage someplace, it's going to be met with a lot of hate and discontent.
Sure.
There's a lot of emotional inertia behind protecting the word leader and leadership. But then I just want to ask the questions to anyone who wants to put in their I don't want opinions. I want prove to me what I'm missing.
Yeah.
And maybe it's in some deeper connection to this word. Maybe the word is correct and we're not teaching it right.
And we need to adjust our own orientations around this word. We could continue on down this for a long time, but
I want to put up the argument that leadership is not real and that it's an epicycle and it's a subcategory of something else.
Yeah. And what that else is, we will continue to discuss. All right. Thanks for hanging with us. Been a production of Anthroponautics, owned and operated by Slade Enterprises. Don't steal our stuff or we will.